It is officially 1 week until Season of the Deep drops, and I'm quite excited about the new season, mostly because it's underwater by the looks of it anyway. And hopefully we're going to see a Leviathan or two. Not to mention, I'm really curious what they're going to do with the dungeon, but that will be more news on the Friday, so we'll just have to sit tight on that. But this is pretty much rounding up everything that is going to be expected in Season of the Deep, and on top of that, I'm going to be giving my own opinions as well as to things I'm excited about. So first order of business, roaming supers are getting stronger. If you've been watching the channel for a fair bit now, you'll know I'm mostly a hunter main, and the fact that Golden Gun is getting a buff, I am quite excited by this because that means Deadshot might actually be quite viable for DPS matters. Because it has been such a long time since I've used Celestial Nighthawk, I just kind of want to test it again when the new season drops, and if it does more damage than Blade Barrage, or when I need to do precision damage, it will do more damage, then I'll be happy with that, because my god, that Harpy and the Wyvern boss in Spire of the Watcher, they are just evil to defeat. On top of that, Arc Staff is getting buffed by 20%, along with Spectral Blades getting a 35% boost as well. And if you like PvP, Gathering Storm is actually getting a buff, so it does a lot more damage against Wall of Radiance and Ward of Dawn now, which is perfect because they do my head in whenever I play Crucible. But it also does a more lightning tick damage to players nearby because they're actually boosting the damage up as well, so it's not likely you're going to survive when you're standing next to the thing. But of course, it's not just Hunters getting some nice benefits, they also come to the Titan and Warlocks too. For Titans, Fist of Havoc is going to get its cost reduced when it comes to attacking, so that's going to be useful to keeping it up longer. And also the heavy attack will now do 33% more damage, so when you slam the ground, it is going to make a really big impact. Just as an added bonus because Bungie thought why not, the heavy attack will also blind targets near the center of the slam area. So not only are you going to be doing a lot more damage, you will also manage to blind any enemies that survive the impact. Glacial Quake, which is the stasis subclass for Titans, Shiver Strike's thrust speed is going to increase by 10% when it's in its super, but also the light attack damage is also going to do 20% more. The Sentinel Shield is getting a 20% PvE damage buff, Hammer of Soul is receiving 10% PvE damage buff, Burning Maul is also receiving a 10% damage increase on PvE, and also creates some spots when Soul Invictus is equipped. And then, just because they thought why not, Heavy Attack Cyclone will also deal Scorch damage over time. For the Warlocks, Nova Warp is getting a 15% damage increase, and a fully charged attack will make enemies volatile on hit. The Nova Bomb will be receiving a 20% PvE damage bonus, Storm Trance is getting a 25% PvE damage bonus, and also Landfall Detonation and Seekers now jolt targets. The Kamehameha is receiving a 25% damage buff, and if you're using it on a single target, it will actually cause a jolting lightning strike to strike as well. Not only that, if you're using it in PvP, the damage resistance that you have when you're using it is increased from 40% to 50%, and the strafe speed is increased as well by 1 meter second. They even adjusted the camera when you go into Chaos Reach, so your body's not going to be blocking your view as much. Winter's Wrath, which is the Stasis subclass, is getting a 10% buff, and Daybreak, while it's not receiving any buffs, it is also having its camera adjusted so it is not obscuring your view as much. And because Strand wasn't broken enough, they're actually buffing Strand a little bit as well, so for the Hunters, they're actually increasing the Threaded Spike damage by 55% in PvE, which I think is crazy because it does a lot of damage anyway, but they're also increasing its travel range as well by 30%, which makes it even better for me. Not only that, it will now pierce the Cabal Phalanx shields as well, which is really good for me because I hate the fact that it bounces off those things. And if you're really good at catching the spike when it comes back, really good news for you because the dart will actually regenerate energy based on the number of enemies it's hit. With the Titan's Frenzied Blade, which is their swingy blade ability, the cooldown on that ability will actually decrease depending on how many melee charge you have stored. So let's say for example you have no charges, cooldown will only be reduced by 15%, but at 2 charges it will get reduced to 30. The same also applies for the Arcane Needle as well for the Warlocks. They're increasing the tracking strength and also the speed of the projectile as well. And something even more crazy, Grapple is getting universally better anyway because the base cooldown is getting reduced from 105 seconds to 82 seconds, and the minimum time, basically that little gap that you'd just be floating through the air waiting for your grapple to come back, is being reduced from the 2.5 seconds it was to 0.2 seconds, so basically non-existent. Which means yes, if there is a way for you to get your grapple back instantly, you can grapple forever with no cooldown. There's also going to be another addition to the Strand subclasses, so we're getting some new aspects in the Season of the Deep as well. For the Hunters, we're getting something called Threaded Spectre, which allows you to leave a decoy behind whenever you use your dodge. And basically the decoy will attract all enemy attention. Obviously this isn't going to work in Crucible because I don't see how it should. But in PvE, this could be quite good because it'll allow all the enemies to focus on the decoy whilst you get to safety and regen your health. But not only that, when it's dealt enough damage, it will release 2 threadlings that seek out different foes as well, so is another bonus for that. Something I'm curious on how I'm going to use this is I'm going to put on Radiant Dance Machines and see if I can spawn like 5 of these, because I think it would just be hilarious to have 5 decoys, but I'm going to test that when this comes out. For Titans, you're getting something called Flechette Storm, and basically what happens is, when you're sliding and you use your charge melee ability, you will leap up into the air and knock pretty much all the enemies back, which deals damage to them all. But whilst you're airborne, if you use your charge melee attack again, you will start firing clusters of unraveling projectiles at anything you're looking at. And it's also in the notes, if you repeatedly activate your melee, you will chain additional throws, so you can just pepper the battlefield with loads of these projectiles. Which I'm really curious to see in action, because the Titans don't exactly have many ranged things to do, so it's nice to actually get a bit of versatility in their builds now. And it was just a matter of time before the Warlocks got this, but you now have Strand buddies. That's basically what I'm going to be dubbing it as anyway. So the aspect they're getting is something called the Wanderer, and basically what it does, it allows the Tangles to become sentient beings, and they will float around seeking out enemies to attach themselves to. When it attaches onto somebody, it will explode and also suspend them at the same time, as well as anybody who's standing anywhere near it. And as an added bonus, anything your Threadlings kill when you've got the Wanderer equipped will actually turn your enemies into Tangles as well. So when you use your super, have fun, because you're going to have a lot of Tangles to play with. But that's the super and ability stuff out of the way. That is quite a lot of information already, but there is a lot more coming, weirdly enough. And one of those things is that old raid exotics will be easier to obtain, and that's because Bungie is going to either be making triumphs or changing triumphs, so that if you complete them, you will basically have a great chance of getting the exotic. Much like we've had in the recent raids and dungeons, there are certain triumphs you can complete to increase your chances of getting the exotic. They are basically moving that change into the order raids as well. That's just a massive positive for me, because I personally haven't got my hands on such a Malice or Eyes of Tomorrow, so I now have a greater incentive to go back and get them. Not to mention, I'm sure people are way more unlucky than me and don't have any of them, so this is even better news for you. They're also going to overhaul quite a few exotics, and I'm only going to talk about the ones I have a slight concern with, because there's a long list of changes here, and I feel like the video is going to drag on long enough anyway. First exotic I have a minor problem with. There is an exotic known as no backup plans, and the new changes that are coming in Season 21 is, whilst you have a void overshield, shotguns deal additional damage and shotgun final blows refresh your overshield. Who on earth thought this was a good idea? You're effectively giving the Titans a second chance to get an overshield, and I'm not gonna lie, they're already busted in PvP. Why would you give them this option? And not only that, if you're using a void subclass, apparently if you get rapid shotgun final blow, so let's say for example you kill 3 players in the Crucible in a streak, it kicks off your health regeneration as well. Warlocks are getting a change to the Vesper radius, and basically you'll let their rifts emit arc shot waves every 5 seconds. And that deals 70 damage in the Crucible and 200 in PvE, so PvE, it's not exactly that groundbreaking, but in PvP, that's a very big deal. That means a Warlock can literally just slide into combat in PvP, put down a rift straight away, and go straight for a punch, and you're pretty much guaranteed to kill the enemy player unless they've got really high resilience. And even if they do survive the punch, you are going to have full health, and it's going to be hard to kill the Warlock in its own well anyway. Whilst it's not as broken as no backup plans, it is still going to be a bit of a nightmare to deal with. Starfire Protocol is being nerfed, which I'm pretty sure everyone's heard about at this point, but the damage reduction is 20% to 2.5%, so any damage you deal is going to give you significantly less grenade energy, but the bright side to this, empowered weapon kills will actually give you 20% energy. So for instance, if you were surrounded by a lot of red bars and you killed a load of them very quickly, you get your grenades back extremely fast. Whether that's enough for players to keep using it, I'm not entirely sure, but we'll have to wait and find out. Another note I'm going to pick out as well is that we're going to get something called precision decryption. What this basically lets us do is focus engrams into the exotics we want, which is going to be absolutely fantastic for getting the exact roll that you want on an exotic, because that's something we've not really been able to do. It's more or less just been luck of the draw. But the cost is quite steep. It's going to cost 60,000 Glimmer and 3 Ascendant shards along with 1 exotic cipher, so yeah, it's kind of costly. But on the bright side to this, they're actually increasing the cap on exotic ciphers from 1 to 5. So you can actually get a small collection of them now from Xur, which is actually more of an incentive to go do Xur's quest, because the most restrictive thing I found when I was doing Xur is that you can only hold 1 cipher. It didn't really warrant me going back and doing it over and over again, but now that this is a thing, it actually seems to make sense just to have the quest there anyway. Because that way, when you complete the quest, you can literally just go hand it in on the following week or whenever you go see Xur, and then you can start the new one and pretty much just mass up a small quantity of exotic ciphers. But with that being all the changes that are coming in Season of the Deep, let's talk about Season of the Deep itself. There is a new scout rifle coming called Last Rite, and I'm going to be honest, this is pretty much the long arm that's just been reskinned, so negative points for Bungie not really being creative and creating this, but you know what? I quite like the long arm scout rifle, so I'm going to be honest, I'm going to give this scout a try. It's obviously the ritual weapon if you haven't read the TWAB, and it's something I am looking at very nicely to be a really good addition to my loadouts. We also managed to get a sneak peek at the armor sets that are going to be coming in Season of the Deep, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know how exactly they designed this. It looks kind of cool in its own way, but at the same time, it just looks weird, because I'm really struggling to see how you can combine certain aspects of these armor pieces to an actual set. Like, I remember discussing this with a mate of mine, that you might be able to combine it with the Root of Nightmare's raid stuff to get some funky designs, but outside of that, it's its own thing, really, and I don't know how I feel about the whole floaty floral stuff yet. If there was an armor set where it was just complete bone armor, I would be 100% down for that, but These I'm just a bit unsure about, but then again, this is just one of the armor sets. There's probably going to be a second one as well, so I'll keep my judgment reserved until I see both of them. And they also gave us a glimpse of one of the maps, and by the looks of it, we aren't actually going to be swimming. We're going to be pretty much running as we always do in Destiny 2, but there will definitely be an aquatic theme around us, and it will look like you're running through water. Whether we're going to get low gravity like we have on the moon is remaining to be seen, but I imagine we would. One thing I kind of do want to see Bungie do is if we get like an oxygen supply, because it will make a lot more sense if the buildings are like go-betweens and we have to travel through the sea to get to each one. But inside each structure, we get our oxygen supply back and we just run around like normal. Whilst we're outside, we kind of have to make sure we don't run out of oxygen or anything like that. That's just completely theory. I don't think that's actually going to be in the game, but it would be cool to see something like that. They're also making some weird changes as well, because now the power cap is going to remain the exact same. I'm not entirely sure why Bungie has opted to do this, but in all honesty, it means less grinding for me, so I'm not going to complain too much. They're probably going to increase the power level again up to 1820 when the new raid comes out in Season 22. And by new raid, I mean Wrath of the Machine, because that's obviously going to come back. If it doesn't, I'm going to be shocked, but we'll wait and see. But the logic behind the theory is every time a raid comes out, they're going to have a power increase so people can actually get an advantage when they're doing the day one raids. But because this video has dragged on long enough now, I'm only going to talk about one more thing, and that is the Deepsight Activation stuff that's going to be coming in Season 21. Effectively, this is a new currency that is going to be coming out on the Season Pass called a Deepsight Harmonizer. So when you get these in the Season Pass, you can actually apply it to a weapon and it will turn it into a deep sight weapon. If it's a non-raid weapon, it'll only cost the Harmonizer, but if it is a raid weapon you want to do, it will cost you 15 Spores of Conquest as well, which I'm going to be honest is not a bad trade-off if you want a deep sight weapon. And because of this, I am not going to be surprised when Wrath of the Machine comes around and people have the crafted weapons within their first run, because that is literally what is going to end up happening. That's going to be it for the video, because I feel like I've covered most of the ground, if not all of it. And if you enjoyed it, remember to leave a like down below and leave a comment as well telling me what you're excited for in Season of the Deep. I would love to know. But for now, I shall see you all in the next video.